This is a Film Stories original podcast.
We made this.
Welcome back everyone to the X-Cast. The truth is in here. This is our special Fight the Future Minute podcast. I'm Tony Black, your host, and you're listening to our coverage of Minute 2 of the X-Files, Fight the Future. This minute begins at 001 minutes precisely as the X-Files logo fades out and ends at 1 minute 59 as two Neanderthal men in 35,000 BC enter a dark ice cave. And to discuss this chilly minute, I'm joined by fellow X-Cast hosts and producers Carl Sweeney and Sarah Blair. Hope you wrapped up warm, guys, for this one.
Absolutely, yeah.
Although
my loincloth is appropriately covered. Yeah.
Not that we need like any protective clothing, because we are recording for Carl and I on the hottest day of the year, of possibly many years. So
since records began in this country, isn't it?
Is it really? Since records began? Is this the hottest day since records began?
It might get there, is what I heard, but you know, who knows?
Wow. So this is for posterity. Thursday, the 25th of July, 2019. We're recording this.
Just to rub it in a little, it's actually a bit cooler today.
Okay.
Than it has been. Sorry, but yeah.
Always nice to have you on the podcast, Sarah. Always nice.
Tony, I think we should do a podcast about the British weather. I think there'd be an audience for it. You know.
Yeah, we should. You know, I don't know why nobody's done that. Like, you could have a weekly roundup, couldn't you? Of that was a bit chilly. Always a bit hot that day. Yeah, it was just every sentence would start with I needed a cup of tea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would listen. To that.
Yeah, we'll call it all the weather. All the weather. Anyway, the weather is chilly in, as it turns out, 35,000 BC, which is where minute 2 of Fight the Future kicks off, which is where we end up. I mean, this is the furthest back I think that we ever go in the X-Files, because you know we get the early on. I think it's in Deep Throat, where Deep Throat suggests they've been here a long time. You know, the aliens, but this is long ago. You don't get many shows, TV, movies go back 35,000 years, do you? Really, it's a very rare sort of time period to see.
Well, I guess what it does is it serves as a point of distinction from the TV series then, doesn't it? Because, yeah, this is not the kind of time frame that would be shown on the show. And I guess we might, you get references to, like, long-gone events in the series, but this kind of visually depicts something that otherwise would have been suggested or implied, doesn't it? So I think they just wanted to kind of do something they couldn't do on TV as easily.
And it's kind of a nice way, I think, to introduce people who hadn't seen the show, maybe, to sort of be like, well, let's just start at the very beginning of all this and sort of let people know, okay, this is what we're dealing with, and they've been here longer than anybody has thought before.
Yeah, well, having said it's a bit of a departure, it does serve as a de facto teaser sequence, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, in the series, we'd often have some kind of time shift between something happening and then Mulder and Scully getting on the case, so sometimes it's like overnight and they investigate the next day. In something like the Calasari, it's a few months. And here we've just got a slightly more dramatic example, haven't we, with a 37,000 year kind of temporal shift. So yeah, it's kind of a piece with what they would do on the series in some ways.
Carl underplaying wonderfully there. It's a little bit longer than we normally get. It's not longer than a couple of months or or a few weeks. 37,000 years. Yeah, it's true. It is true, though. It is. You could have put this, in theory, before that brief credit sequence we've just had. You know, it could have gone. You could have had the Fox logo and then open up on this, and then, maybe at the end of the cave or something like that, thing with the EBE. Then it cuts to the. But I don't think it would have worked that way round better. I think the way the transition they do use, You know, he's far better into the cave with Stevie dropping into the cave in a few minutes' time. I think that's much better. So it is a pre credit sequence in all but name, really. I mean, and even to the point you get what I loved is the font. They still use the classic X-Files location font.
We need to talk to JJ Lindell about that, because he had some things to say about the font between I think it's the DVDs and the Blu-rays, maybe.
Yeah, it's different now, isn't it, on Blu-ray?
Yeah. So.
Oh, really? Has it changed?
Yeah.
They couldn't locate the original font, or they couldn't get the rights to it or something, so it's actually slightly different. So everybody who's come to the series via Blu-ray or streaming or whatever, I guess, has had a slightly different experience to TV viewers of the 90s, yeah. Sadly.
That is sad.
Yeah.
It's near enough. It's pretty close, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't notice, so that shows my lack of awareness.
I didn't either.
But yeah, what I like about this is that they do a bit of almost like a comedic dramatic effect with this, don't they? Because when you see the two guys running through the snow, and then it puts North Texas and they hold it, so everyone's like, "What? This is not your North Texas, y'all." Sorry, Sarah. This ain't North Texas. Was that? I shouldn't do this, should I? Really, I shouldn't do it. But anyway, and then you get the 35,000 BC. I mean, are they trying to disorientate the audience, or is it a gag? I mean, what do you think about that gap?
Well, I think it's quite funny, like you say, when you get the North Texas followed by the timestamp. I guess what they were trying to do, I think Spotnitz alludes to this somewhere on the commentary. They enjoyed, it seemed, you didn't have these restraints imposed on them. They could do something like this. But I think the question is, do you lose more than you gain by expanding the canvas to do something like this? Because what the series has in spades, I think, is a sense of like restraint and closeness and intimacy, especially in the early years. So when you blow it up and you're doing stuff from like the dawn of man, kind of, prehistoric man, is it necessary? Does it work? Is it a bit silly? I don't know.
I think it does. I think it does. It's almost like a nod to the fact that we're not in Kansas anymore. You know what I mean? That kind of thing. It's a different kind of world that you're in. You know, this could be an alien planet almost. It's so far back than from anything we understand that it adds a really good air of mystery to it as well. I think you have that. These two Neanderthal men running through the snow. Is just like, you think, wow, what is going to happen? Like, this far back, what is going to happen here? Is it going to be a UFO? Is it going to be, whatever? You just don't know at this stage. And it's exciting. It's a kind of ground, to some respect, things like Prometheus would later tap, instead of tracking back in terms of the, ancient astronaut theory and all this idea of sort of prehistoric alien contact and stuff, which is, I love all that stuff. But I think it's really good in that sense. I
think what it does is, you get these icy landscapes that kind of bookend the film, don't you? Mm-hmm. And then the Texas scenes coming up in the present day are hotter than hell, as Scully says. So it contrasts with that too. And I think Carter had talked about wanting to start and end the film in an extreme place. So it definitely does that, doesn't it?
Well, I think it sets up a mystery and like draws in the viewer, and that's what you want in the first few seconds of a film, is to like really, grab people's attention, and it does make you pay attention because you're sitting there thinking, what is about to happen? It's got to be something big. I mean, we're watching the X-Files film now, so it's going to be epic and really scary. So I think it definitely accomplishes the fact of, drawing people in and making them sit up and pay attention. And I mean, that's what the X-Files does best, really, even in the show with the teasers and the first few minutes of each episode. Is the job is to make you pay attention somehow. So I think it accomplishes that really nicely.
It does. And I keep thinking, because this is essentially, as they call, a cold open, literally. It sort of sets up a mystery, something like that. But I mean, and is that what audiences would have expected, particularly X-Files fans? Would they have expected to see Mulder and Scully immediately on this broad canvas? I mean, if we look back, what were our expectations? Did it matter? Or was this something that made more sense when you're trying to capture a broader audience of fans as opposed to just fans of the X-Files?
I was always of the view that you needed them to be investigating something. I wasn't purely interested in as characters for themselves. They needed to be on a case, on a quest or something. So I would have expected to see something like this to kick things off, something unrelated that they would then be drawn into. So I think it works really well in that respect. I think that what I'd never really thought about before is, do you think these guys are like hunting the creature or possibly trying to rescue the guy we see later on in the ice? Because they're following those footsteps, aren't they? You know, they're hunting the alien into the cave, or they're trying to track it into the cave. And they seem to pause when they see that it leads into the cave. So I'd never really thought about their motivations before, but I guess they were on the case, or they were following the creature, I suppose.
They're a prehistoric Mulder and Scully, basically, aren't they?
Two isolated figures, yeah. Stand alone on the trail of aliens.
And they've got
together.
their torches, right? And
No,
so with their
later,
flashlights, yeah.
Yeah, so they get their fiery sticks. Well, which one of them's Mulder and which one's Scully? You know, from when they're running up, can we infer character from their running through the snow?
I mean, I'm gonna go with the one that beats the heck out of the alien. That's Scully. She's gonna kick some ass. Show him who's boss.
I'll tell you what I learned. On the DVD on the Blu-ray rather, that surprised me, which I didn't know, was like this sequence was directed by a guy somebody called E.J. Forster, who's listed on IMDb as director, Glacial Unit. So not a Rob Bowman sequence, in other words. You know, so I didn't know that before. I thought that was interesting.
They did this on a few points. I think as we talk about it, there were certain. Chris Carter did a couple of scenes as well. So I think it was a team effort at times for the sheer logistics of shooting in different places, you know, globally. You know, I mean, at one point they have to send a second unit to London for like pickup shots, you know, as well as, in this case, this was filmed on the Pemberton Ice Cap in British Columbia. So you had a crew there, you had people in Texas, you know. Well, no, they didn't shoot in Texas, did they? They shot in LA, I think. They shot in California with the Texas scenes, I think. So you had people all over the place. So, yeah, it makes sense to sort of get competent people involved. Did you know about the casting for the actual Neanderthal guys themselves? The ones here, the ones who are running, and ultimately the ones then who fight the EBE.
No,
because they are actually former linebackers, athletes who they hired specifically in order to make the fighting with the aliens later seem authentic, like big guys. Because obviously these Neanderthal guys would be bigger, you know, powerful men, because they're, you know, surviving in the freaking ice age. So they're going to be tough. They would have easily been able to cope with British weather when it's at its worst. You know, when it's like 2 degrees, it's dark in the morning, and it's pissing down with rain. They'd be fine. They'd be all right. They'd be like, "This is nothing." They didn't speak like that, but you know what I mean. So these guys are hard men. So that I thought that's a good like little thing that they hired. I think the authenticity. It's authenticity, isn't it? I suppose their frame. You know, did you feel that when you watched it? Do you think these guys are big? These sort of fit the Neanderthal size?
Yeah, I mean, I've never... And when you've got the big screen, too, you've got to get epic people to fill it. So, I mean...
Yeah.
Makes sense to open with that, I think.
True.
Well, it's interesting that they talked about, I think, on the commentary about getting the look of these people right. And it's like, we don't know exactly what people looked like in 35,000 BC, but we've got a sense of what looks wrong, if that makes sense. So I think they started off, and some of the designs they had looked a bit more cartoony and kind of ape-like. And then they kind of veered the other way, and they got a bit more realistic and too much like contemporary man. So, yeah, I never really stopped to think about the look of those people, which suggests that it works quite well, that it wasn't distracting and jarring. You know, it does the job well enough, I think. They
didn't dress them like the Flintstones.
Yeah.
You know, which would have been.
It helps to set the atmosphere too, because it's kind of dark and shadowy and quick cuts to, I think, help that aspect of it a little bit too.
Although what I wouldn't give for that one of these guys to get into that cave and go, Wilma. Maybe there's the deleted set. I'd have totally done that if I was them for the crack. I would. Wilma.
because didn't they say that one of the guys was like a surfing buddy of Chris Carter's or something?
Yeah,
They
randomly. And they actually had actual fur cloths they were wearing because they weren't allowed to wear any undergarments. So they had to have the proper method. Yeah. So that would have been fun, would it?
That's not the kind of method acting I would have signed up for.
I'll tell you what, I'm just glad I didn't live in 35,000 BC, guys.
Yeah.
It wouldn't have been much fun, would it?
Would have been shit, wouldn't it? You'd have.
Well, you wouldn't have had the X-Files for one thing. So.
Well, all the things we take for granted, like being able to watch one TV show and record another, there was none of that,
Picture in picture.
Pretty inconvenient. Yeah.
Their entertainment was, how much fire can we get off this flint? You know what I mean? that was it for a whole night. Yeah. Grim times.
Well, you'd stare at a cave painting all night, I reckon. That would be the equivalent of, like, your Netflix,
Early Bob Ross. Paint the happy clouds.
Anyway, I think we've beat this minute to death now, so let's...
Caveman style.
Let's wrap it up there. Yeah, So you guys are going to be back for minute 3 as the Neanderthals head into the ice cave for a bit more. So it'd be good to have you back then. Get your clubs ready. You're going to need them, and we'll see you for our next minute next time. But as always, remember, trust no one.